So David just introduced me as a human being, and outwardly I look like one, but really I actually feel much more akin to creatures of the water. I've spent 63 years either under, on top of, or next to the sea. And I was gifted to grow up on the Oregon coast, and where ocean meets land, there's an abundance of wild food. I grew up in foraging, and the menu of my youth read like a hipster restaurant in Portland. It was blackberries and fiddlehead ferns and deer and those prodigious salmon runs. And these were my first relationships with my food, what I was eating. I had context for everything that was going into my body. So this was my beginning. I had no inkling at the time that years later I would grow up to spend most of my time in a kitchen, using these same wild foodstuffs, creating meals for hundreds and thousands of my fellow Americans. And the magic part of it was I was also sharing those same stories, that same context behind the food I was feeding them. So I woke up this morning at the edge of this same salty sea, and life where I live, Cascade Head, where the Salmon River meets the sea, is mind-bogglingly big, especially in the wintertime. It's wild. We had 134 inches of rain fall on our house last year. That's 13 feet. And one of the primary reasons that I love living in this wild place is that because of all this water, there's a lot of fish. And I am wild and crazy. As David said, I love fish. And in fact, I'm fonder of fish than I am of most human beings I meet. And you may laugh, and this may sound humorous, but really at its root, there is this epic, optimistic way that they conduct their lives that I really deeply, deeply respect. Why they are in so many ways my superheroes. But some say that my superheroes may be doomed. So 2048. This is the year that an international panel of world-class marine biologists have predicted that we will stop eating the fish from the sea. 2048. If we don't stop fishing unsustainably, my beloved salmon and tuna, and yours, may end up gone. That's only 30 years away. Most of the people in this room, the lifespan of most of the people in this room. But this is motivating for me because I'm curious about what I might be able to do in my everyday to solve this problem before it's too late. So for a moment, I want you to imagine that you're looking at a boardroom table. And around that boardroom table is gathered a group of people. They are government regulators. They are nonprofits, and they are some of the largest food companies in America. And they are busy planning out what they're going to feed us 3 meals a day for the rest of our lives. At the far end of that table is a giant chair, and it dwarfs all the rest. And it's empty. That chair is for the 800-pound gorilla that's not in the room. The American consuming public. You. Me. And there's a reason that this seat is largely empty, and it's not because we don't care. And it's not because we don't want to show up. It's that most of us seriously don't, even in this room, even Portlandian living color, really don't know where most of our food is coming from. So this is at the heart of why I'm standing up here tonight. Taking our seat at this table. Now, I would hold that the biggest environmental problems in the world have started with someone consuming something, like fish. So let's talk about that someone consuming something, you. I want to talk about your personal integrity, your ethics, what drives you from inside, your beliefs. Do your actions generally align with your beliefs? Does what goes in your mouth align with your beliefs? I remember the first time someone asked me that years ago, and I simply couldn't answer yes. Not because I didn't know what I believed in, more that I just didn't know where my food was coming from. I remember thinking to myself, would I ask perfect strangers into my house without knowing something about them first? Probably not. So why did I feel so free to invite strange food into my body? So in these past 4 or 5 generations of industrialized food, of big food, I believe we've lost this sense of connection, these stories that I was talking about earlier. The inherent trust that came from foraging it, growing it, hunting it. Many of us in this room know that feeling. But we've lost it. The thousands of years of connection with our food, I believe we've lost in these industrial generations. So this brings me to my idea, and it is this. Be an ethical eater. Engage with your food. Connect to its source. Change the world as we know it. These are 3 simple steps becoming a living part of what I would call an environmental movement 2.0. Our votes had a big impact last week. We could all see that. So I'm going to use that as a metaphor for a moment. Food is an economic democracy. We vote with the dollars in our purses and our wallets. The modern grocery store is our voting booth. We can change everything if we are an informed block of voters electing those brands that align with what we deeply believe in. We vote 3 times a day. So how do we get to this conscious and engaged state of eating? Well, there are 2 words that I love and that really capture it for me. Relentless transparency. So seeing deeply into what is sustaining us, who the people are, the places, the how, the what, the why, and where. And if we gain this visibility, I believe we will change everything. I spend my whole day, my whole life with this. I believe there's not a company in America that wants to be caught publicly doing the wrong thing for the planet, for our bodies, for our fellow human beings. Let me put it this way. If you knew your dinner guests were coming over and they were going to peek in your refrigerator or your closet, would you clean it up? I believe big America and big food is no different. Well, maybe bigger closets, yeah? But I want to highlight the importance of relentless transparency to all of us in this room by taking you for a very, very brief walk on the dark side. What if I told you that you and the majority of your fellow Americans have eaten a fish that was caught or processed by a slave? That restaurant meal that you had recently, it was not the fish they said it was on the menu. 90% of the large fish in the ocean are gone. 25% of the fish we catch, we throw back, most of them dead. 93% of the fish that we catch in this state and in all the coastal states of America goes to other countries, feeds people in other countries. And here's some bad math. 90% of the fish you will eat, 90% of the fish you will eat this year came from a foreign country. So not only is that bad math, but it's also some pretty dark little secrets of my industry. But again, they are motivating because we possess the power to change the way we feed ourselves. I'm drying out up here. My gills are drying out. So we possess this power to change the unhealthy and dark practices that you just saw. So let's move out of this darker place into the light again. I want to share with you something from a seafood project that I've been working on over the last 6 years. And I do so because it's an example of what is possible. That this relentless transparency that I've been harping on is not a pipe dream, it's real. So what you're seeing here is what sustains us, some beautiful food. We have been using this on our packaging in every single state in the union, 10,000 stores, right? Millions of meals. This is a very simple link. It's that farmer's market intimacy again. It's a very simple link to the people, the boats, the water, what their lives are like, and that we are fishing on sustainable stocks, not unsustainable ones. So with this simple tool, we are literally selling the truth. We are in the business of trust, or maybe I should say regaining that old trust. We are extending that farmer's market intimacy at scale across an entire country. And in doing so, we're swimming upstream against those giants I mentioned to you earlier. The giants of the seafood industry. When I was growing up, my mother's in the audience. She knows my favorite bedtime story was David and Goliath. I was meeting with one of the Goliaths of the seafood industry recently. And he was a CEO, and as I was leaving, he put his arm around me and he said, you know, Duncan, I think it's cute what you're doing with this traceability thing, but really, when you get to be our size, it's just not logistically feasible. And I remember thinking, oh my God, this isn't about logistics. I mean, we've all got to trace food back to its source for food recalls. This is about having the will and the integrity to share everything. And our consumer craves it. And what we were talking about earlier about ethics and personal integrity allows me as a person, as a captain of industry, if you will, to align the beliefs I have with what I'm doing in the world. So all of our products, all of them, connect the dots. They all tell stories. And as important as they are, we've just been talking about fish here. Imagine if we established this level of transparency with everything that's in your refrigerator or your cupboards. So the meat, the dairy, the grains, everything you're putting into your body. And here's a moment that I have only imagined a few times in my life, but I think this is like the biggest prize of all. What if we took everything we purchased and we knew about its source? So the sneakers on your feet. In fact, Wilson, this call goes out to you, right? Let's get sneakerheads working on this, right? This is Sneaker Town. So what about the phones in your pockets? What about the tires waiting on your car outside? What would it be like if you knew the stories behind them? It is said that the internet has created a world where there's nowhere left to hide. So if that's true, the phones in your pockets right now, the computers in your car at home, turn into very, very powerful tools for you to be in the know. And if you're reaching out to these companies that are feeding you, and they're not talking to you, or they won't because the truth will hurt, find someone that will. Find a brand or a company or a farmer that is friends with the truth. So I would like to share a call to action that's actually an easier way to get involved with your food, and it's something that my wife and I do every day, and it's a little bit like a detective story. So we sit down, we have a meal, and this is not drudgery. This is like an exciting thing we look forward to, and that is, tell me the story of where this food came from. Tell me this story. So we sit and we listen to each other. And then if there are mystery foods on our plate, we jump online. And there's an amazing amount of information out there if we ask for it. So on forums, on blogs, we write directly to the management of food companies. We go on Facebook. It's very powerful if you do this with company, like in public, so that people can hear the dialogue and weigh in themselves. Let your North Star of those ethics and what you believe in guide you. So if it's eliminating slavery, if it's overfishing, if it's just simply you want to know more about the purity of that ingredient, let them know. The good news, this usually only takes about 10 to 15 minutes for us to do this. So being that ethical eater in an environmental movement 2.0 is actually really easy. So hey, here's an idea, and this is a shout out to Alan. Next week's Thanksgiving, bring a dish that has a story, right? Share some eatertainment with your friends and your family, right? Yeah, this can be fun. So, ethical eater. Let's talk about where we've been in this really brief journey together tonight. Food is an economic democracy. Check. Relentless transparency allows us to vote with our dollars for the good guys. Check. This will change whole industries, and they'll clean up their act when it comes to how they treat people and the planet. Check. If you don't remember anything else I've said tonight, please remember this. We can all become ethical eaters, every one of us. Engage with your food, connect to its source, vote with your dollars, and you can be a living part of this environmental movement 3.0. When we do that, we change the world as we know it. To prove it, let me tell you one last story, and this is about the eastern bluefin tuna. This is one of the most hunted animals on the planet, one of the most beloved in sushi restaurants, right? 10 years ago, the eastern Atlantic bluefin tuna was on its lips. It was almost gone. And so ethical eaters, consumers like you, banded together with NGOs, and they went to the government, and the government responded by putting quotas on this fish that restricted the fishing for just 10 years. This year, in 2018, it will be fully rebounded. Fully. Yes. Yes. This fish just needed room to breathe. They needed a moment to breathe. We gave them that moment. This is our moment as the alpha predators on this planet. Our food is an incredible gift we are given every single day. And I truly believe that the future of food is here, gathered in this room, in the human beings. In closing, I want to share with you my favorite saying from the 60s. And it's a bit cliched now, but I believe that it has never been truer than it is right now at this moment. It anticipated, 30 years later, this ethical eater movement. You are what you eat. Enjoy your food. Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Questions low income means and how can we bring this to scale regardless of socioeconomic background?
You know, I'll be honest, this is a question we ask ourselves a lot, right? I was saying, well, use your phone or your computer. What if you don't have a phone or a computer? So I think, though, there's something that's free in all of this that really does not know economic bounds, and that's knowledge and the power of knowledge. So if you turn to the grocery store, everybody's going to eat, right? So they're getting it somewhere. You know, I, as someone that's inside a company, we really pay attention to when people speak up. You know, you tend to think, well, they just don't listen. It's amazing when, no matter where you live, no matter what you eat, I don't care if you're eating at Jack in the Box. You know, it really doesn't matter to us whether you're eating Doritos or the finest free-range chicken, right? To me, it's like, just know where it's coming from, know what it is. And I don't think that's a socioeconomic issue as much as it is a deep desire to want to connect with your food. And I think when you do, you can make better choices, right? So hopefully that just transcends all lifestyles. Yeah, so I hope that answers your question. Yeah.
We talked about that a lot. And we also talked about ethics versus integrity and
Yes, thank you.
understanding the background of food and value systems. But ultimately, I think it's having a relationship with your food, right? Being an engaged eater. Yes?
So tell us about the number on the back of the package and how that works, and if your idea is to scale that to all kinds of packaged foods.
Yes, thank you very much. So if you look on the back of any of the packages you have there, there's a digital code, and all you do is you climb on our website, you plug it in, and basically you can go almost as deep as you want to learn more about the food that you're eating. The power of feeling connected to a product that you know has gone to 50 states, but is very similar to having gone to a farmer's market, is a radical feeling. One thing I will say, and David and I talked about this, we have been awarded some of food's finest awards for our traceability. And while we're very honored, inside we're kind of shaking our heads like, shouldn't this be like everything? So yes, if we had our way, and we've already lifted some boats. There's some much larger companies than ours that are now offering traceability for that reason. But really, wouldn't it be wonderful if, along with the ingredient panel, we just turned it over and we were able to either log on or just read more and contextualize the food? Yes, so let's do this again in 10 years, and I hope that we can say that about more of our food. Yeah.
I think it's one thing to see like caloric intake on the back of packaging, right? And that was a game changer, what, 15 years ago, 10 years ago? FDA, and this is the next step. The internet, Seth brought up a good point earlier that we can't hide anymore. And your analogy of inviting guests over to look in our pantry or our fridge, you'd probably clean it up. So this is an opportunity for big, small, David Goliath companies to understand the will and intention behind storytelling in their products, their food. But please, like when you leave, like this is bigger than food. Like Wilson's idea with designing with empathy, it's bigger than design. It's grains, it's meats, it's sneakers, it's tires. So it's going to be really interesting to see how things evolve in the next 10 years as we demand more accountability of our corporate brands. Yeah.
What sustainable fish do you think more people should eat?
Wow.
What sustainable fish do you think more people should be trying in Oregon?
Sure. Well, one of my heroes, I mentioned a hero, is the albacore tuna. This is an Oregon tuna. We have a fish that comes 5,000 miles to feed on the upwelling. This is a journey that they've taken. It's a remarkable fish. That and I think the two poster children for me is so the tuna, it stays offshore. There's a lot of biomass there. We catch them with hook and line, unlike other countries that actually use large nets and catch a lot of them at the same time. So, hero of a story, albacore tuna. The other question you asked, I'm going to have to scratch my head on. I tend to be focused on fisheries, and so one of the things that I really would hope is that everybody understands their relationship with salmon, and how they can be salmon friendly in their lifestyles and be thoughtful about your relationship with salmon. They are us. We are salmon walking.
Let's go here and here to conclude the night.
Okay, so 93% of the area fish are exported elsewhere.
Yes.
Is that because of lack of awareness of what we have in our backyard, or is it because other countries and areas pay more, or the companies realize they can extract more money from selling elsewhere? And how could we go ahead and raise awareness and stop that?
The question is 93% of food exported. Is it a problem or a challenge of economies of scale and sending it to foreign markets because they're paying more, right? And what was the second part?
Or is it because lack of awareness?
Lack of awareness.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
So I think this gets to the heart of how we're different as a seafood company. We built a seafood company from the customer backwards, whereas usually they build it from the supply chain forward. What we said is we don't want to ship logs, we want to ship furniture, right? We want to make something different out of that seafood. So we're treating our oceans in many ways here much like a third world country, in that we are exporting almost all of that food with no value added. So I think the answer is we should do what other countries have done, and that's what we're doing, is let's make food that has value added to it. It's easier, it's more gourmet. We make seafood more accessible. And so America eats, this is a shocker for me, America eats 1/3 of the seafood Europe does. We think we're big seafood eaters. We don't touch the rest of the world. And so that's one of the reasons they're consuming it. And the other thing is we have the last great savannas of seafood off our shores. This is a remarkable place of protein. And so that's the other thing, is they know it's pure and that it's beautiful. We have this incredible gem. All we're saying is let's add more value to it and feed our fellow countrymen as well as others.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah.
So it not the future they said that it is
Yes.
from, right?
Yes.
So with this movement, hopefully,
Yes.
it gets better and better.
Yes.
What is stopping those bigger companies, the same restaurants, giving us the story of where
Mhm.
that fish came from? How do you
You.
combat that?
I keep coming back to this. It's just like a broken record, but I can't count how many times that I've said, "Oh my gosh, you've got salmon on the menu and it's fresh and it's December. We haven't been fishing for like 5 months. How did it get there?"
Knowledge.
And I'll check with the chef. Hold on, I'll be right back. And they come back. Well, actually, that's farmed. And I'll say this: we're not against farmed if it's done right, but you asking the questions will keep. I mean, it's that closet and that refrigerator. It will keep them honest. You have the. I mean, can't underscore how much power there is in this room.
We have to have the knowledge to ask the question.
Exactly. So you have to ask the question first, though. Yeah. Like what? That's weird. Tell me a little bit more about this Chinook salmon. I mean, this is Portlandia moment. Tell me about my chicken. You know? And yes, we do name all our fish. Yeah.
Wrap it. All right, I think we'll wrap it on that. I mean, come on, the room's alive. One huge round of applause for Wilson, May, and
Yes,
Duncan.
thank you. Thank you, Wilson.